Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are going to be looking at the All Bard Party, the next video in my newest series, the All Single Class Full Party Build series. Again, still working on that catchier name. Anyways, today we have a band of bards, one being a vocalist, one being a guitarist, one being a violinist, and one being a drummer. Basically, bards won the kind of last poll, I guess. For the record, the way I decide which class comes next in this series is by you guys upvoting the comments down below. Comment what class you want to see, upvote that comment, and then the comment with the most upvotes will pick the next class. Bards won in an absolute landslide. I think 40 was the maximum amount of upvotes, and the next highest comment was like 15 or something, so it wasn't even close. Bards, and especially kind of making a band of bards, was an extremely popular concept, and I really think I was kind of able to do this justice. Each of these bards has a playstyle based on the instrument they are playing, as I'll get to in a moment. Also, can I just say I'm kind of happy with how I was able to kind of design this party. The outfit synergy with the three kind of musicians, the backup players, and then the kind of like really flashy, almost 1940s, 50s-esque like lead vocalist kind of like that kind of vibe. I think I actually nailed it. It feels like a really unique kind of like visual dynamic for the party. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. And this party is also extremely strong. Bards are just an extremely strong class in this game regardless. And especially when you have a couple of, well, let's just say, extremely powerful subclasses, this party does kind of shred most encounters. Its biggest issue is its overall kind of squishiness. Bards don't have the highest hit point pool, and with the stats how I kind of had to make them with this build, not all of the characters on here can take too many hits, but I've taken that into account with some of the abilities that I've gone for here. So, without further ado, let's get into the builds. First off, we have the vocalist herself, the leading lady. She is a level 12 College of Law bard, because for those of you that don't know, I'm not allowed to multi-class in this series. So, with the College of Law, it obviously is kind of considered the spellcaster of the group, as it gets access to a lot of spells Bard wouldn't normally be able to. It is also the subclass that is most focused on using your voice, allowing you to use the cutting words feature to basically use your bardic inspiration to do the opposite of what it would normally do to enemies, debilitating them, forcing them to reroll with a penalty, stuff like that. And it also throws out insults as well, absolutely making use of the voice that you have to be able to affect the battlefield, and all of these builds also do have a feat accompanying them as well that I felt like fit the build, and this build has gone with Lucky to basically double up on the cutting words benefit and the kind of bardic inspiration angle, allowing us to spend luck points, which is a separate resource, to gain advantage on attack rolls or saving throws, or make an enemy reroll their attack throw. So this is a very heavy battlefield control build when it comes to using our external resources that aren't really spell slots. We do have a lot of control spells on here though. Bards are going to naturally come with these, and a lot of the kind of spell lists on these builds overlap, but this whole party is about debilitating their foes before actually striking. So we've got things like Otto's Irresistible Dance, Dominate Person, Hold Monster, Confusion, Slow, which comes from Magical Secrets that I'll get to later, Tasha's, Greater Invisibility, Hold Person, Hypnotic Pattern, Enthrall, because again, making creatures look at you kind of makes sense for a bard, and of course we also get all of the usual bard stuff, Vicious Mockery, Song of Rest, Jack of all trades. But this specific build, I obviously again wanted to focus on using our voice, and I felt like instead of just having this bard just be able to throw out insults, let's make their voice actually rather soothing, something that everyone would love to hear, to the point where it actually does heal them. So this character is a healer as well, going for Healing Word and Cure Wounds, and using our Magical Secrets to pick up Mass Healing Word, also grabbing Mass Cure Wounds as well, allowing us to get a serious amount of healing done, which is great for a slightly squishier party. Mass Healing Word is especially really nice since it only takes our bonus action, meaning that we can still do other important things as an action. And for our kind of final magical secret spell, I've gone over most of them here, that being Slow. What was the other one? There was Slow. Oh, my mind's going a blank here. Slow was one of them. Mass Healing Word was the other. I've also gone for Magic. Missile, because as you can see here, we've got Falour Bard. It's literally the singing sword. Yes, I know this character is not a drow, but I could not ignore this sword as it fits too perfectly for a vocalist type character. I've used this sword a lot with Bard builds, and heck, a lot this week. This is my second time featuring it this week, I believe. Well, I guess technically not this week. It would have been last week with the Elemental Gish. You know what I'm... the Elemental Nova. You know what I mean. But basically, Falour Bard is going to give us the ability to do Falour Bard Melody, either sing, buffing our allies, or shriek, debuffing our enemies, as well as making them take an extra 1d4 thunder damage from all damage sources. Combining that with Magic Missile... that's an extra 1d4 thunder damage on every single dart. This is a pretty well-known combo, but it does absolutely shred enemies, as you will see in the combat footage. So overall, like I said, we have your typical Bard control support build, debuffing enemies, buffing allies, and going for battlefield control, but with the added effect of being a really effective healer, which again is really going to help this party. But otherwise, we do just have kind of the standard Bard affair. And of course, none of the spell selections I went for here are final. Feel free to change these around as you like. But let's get into the equipment. For the weapon, obviously, I've already explained, we have Falour Bard, and I do have the Darkfire Shortbow on here, but it is not necessary. This is just a holdover from when this character was the Dancer of Elistre, because if you don't know, that is my main character in Act 3, who I respec and redesign for these builds. The more you know. So, that is optional if you want to have Haste as another buffing option, but just having the passive resistances is quite nice. For our headpiece, we have Wapira's Crown. Whenever we heal another, the wearer regains another d6 hit points. I just wanted to maximize the amount of healing that we're getting, since our main method of healing is Mass Healing Word, as it only takes a bonus action. This is going to allow us to get that extra d6 on top of the usual healing, meaning we're able to keep the party very, very healthy. Because we didn't take a subclass that gives us access to medium armor like Valor or Swords with this character, we were stuck with light armor. However, the Elegant Studded Leather is a great light armor, giving you a +2 bonus to initiative rolls, allowing you to act in setup right away, access to shield once per short rest, so basically once per fight, which can come in clutch, and advantage on stealth checks, so this party can be a little bit stealthy when it needs to. Not all bards always want to be seen on stage. Sometimes they have to slip out the back, maybe because they did a bad performance for some reason, but this group would never ever do a bad performance. They all have expertise in performance, because of course they do. Of course, this is an Act 3 option, so an early game option could be the Studded Level +1, which you get right in Act 1. I'll have stuff in the description for you there for you to check out, but I didn't want this video to be too long, so we're just looking at the kind of main equipment here. Speaking of main equipment, the Wondrous Gloves, giving us a +1 to our armor class, and in addition, if we have Bardic Inspiration, we gain another use of it. Another use of Bardic Inspiration on a Bard is always great, giving us a grand total of 6 at max level, as well as giving us a bump to our armor class, because despite wearing light armor, this is the character on this party with the lowest dexterity, simply because I preferred to have more constitution for those concentration saving throws, and obviously I want a charisma maxed out to give our spell save DC the best chance it has to succeed, so dex is a bit on the lower side, so I have bumped up our armor class through the Wondrous Gloves and the Ring of Protection as well. And finally, for our boots, we have the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. Again, this is a character who is front and foremost on stage. They are the kind of person in the limelight, slipping over on grease or ice, or suddenly becoming restricted, like getting the dress tangled, would be extremely embarrassing and ruin a show. So the Disintegrating Nightwalkers prevent that, also giving us a usage of Misty Step for a very stylish entrance, or perhaps an exit, who knows. Now, and onto the accessories, we have the Psychic Spark, allowing us to shoot an additional dart whenever we cast Magic Missile, amping up the power of our Shriek Melody Magic Missile combo even further. We also have the Whispering Promise. Since we're a healing build, we might as well let our heals that cover the whole party also give everyone Bless, a +1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws. Couldn't ask for more. And as I already said, the Ring of Protection to give us a +1 to armor class and saving throws. There is another pair of boots you can slap on this build that I know somebody was going to mention if I didn't point it out, even though they're honestly not great. And that is the Boots of Brilliance. They are literally a bardic boot. Once per long rest, you can restore an additional point of bardic inspiration. It's kind of bad. We already have the Wondrous Gloves giving us a +1 that recovers with our short rest, so recovering 1 on a long rest that we have to spend our action to do doesn't really make sense, but since this is an all-bard party, I thought I might as well mention it, but honestly, not great. The best part about this build, though, is that pretty much all of these pieces of equipment are obtained really early on, with the exception of the elegant studded leather, so you can pretty much get this build online right away. So, yeah, I think this build works out really nicely. It has a pretty solid combo, again, lots of battlefield control. We use our voice with things like Vicious Mockery and Dissonant Whispers, and the progression, since it's a single-class build, much like all of these builds, is going to feel very, very nice. So yeah, that is the Vocalist, your pretty standard Valour Bard control build, with a bit of healing to spice things up. Next up, the Guitarist. Let's angle the camera a bit better for visuals' sake. There we go. So, with the Guitarist, I have gone for another kind of bardic thing, and that is dueling, so basically going for a, like, kind of rapier-type fighting style. And this is our College of Valour Bard for this build. And as such, I've focused a little bit less on maxing out our charisma and instead going for a high dexterity, combining this with the harmonic dueler to get mellow harmony to allow us to harmonize with the rest of the group, making a performance check, success meaning that all of our melee weapon attacks deal additional damage equal to our charisma modifier for 10 turns, once per short rest. Overall, felt very thematic for this build and works out nicely, but of course, something like the Duelist Prerogative, if you really want to slap on the power, could work, but I liked the harmonic dueler thematically here, so it's what I went with. And again, bards do kind of have a, kind of like a stereotypical bard usually is seen wielding a rapier when they're not playing their instrument and kind of being like all suave and all that. So I felt like having at least one rapier user on this team made sense to me. And it also gave me an opportunity to take a feat that I don't actually think I've ever taken on a build before. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because that means you have to go back and watch all of my videos, and, you know, more views is more ad revenue for me. But I decided to use Defensive Duelist here, while attacking with a finesse weapon you are proficient with, which, of course, we are. You can use a reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class, possibly causing the attack to miss. At the end of the day, this is a frontline fighter. We do get things like extra attack. So getting Defensive Duelist to be able to bump up our already pretty decent armor class. We have another 18 here, but, you know, I feel like this could still work out pretty nicely, just making us that bit more tanky. But this guy's whole deal is going to be that kind of like, he's kind of like an up-close fighter who also does kind of spread the debuffs. So we've got things like the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel here to make it so that after we hit with our weapon, we can cast things like Vicious Mockery to spread that around. We also got things like Cloud of Daggers, Crown of Madness, Eye Bite, Dominate Person, Hypnotic Pattern, Fear, basically just get Glyph of Warding, and then offensive spells taken from Magical Secrets being Fire Shield for a bit of retaliation, and Cone of Cold, basically getting into the thick of it, dodging in and out of attacks, and dealing a bit of extra damage thanks to Harmonic Dueler, and then after dealing an attack, being able to spread the debuffs like Vicious Mockery or Dissonant Whispers, or Fear, or something like that. Basically, again, kind of just like swapping between kind of spellcasting and using a weapon, which I felt like was pretty nice for this build overall. Anyways, let's get into the equipment proper. We have the Cap of Curing. I had to put it on someone. There's probably a better option here, but since we are a College of Valour Bard, and we are going to be wanting to use combat inspiration quite a lot, because it adds extra weapon damage and armor class for our allies as well as the usual bardic inspiration stuff, I figured getting a little bit of healing in there too is nice. And again, this is an early game option that you could pick up, but if you feel like you want something better, perhaps the Birthright Hat to round out that charisma to 20, feel free to go ahead, but I wanted to show this off more. Next up, the Adamantine Scale Mail. We pretty much just wanted good medium armor, and this is good medium armor. A base 16 armor class. All magical damage, incoming damage is reduced by 1. Whenever a melee attack hits us, the attacker is sent reeling for 2 turns, and critical hits cannot be landed against us, just making us overall more tanky. However, of course, you could swap this medium armor out for any of the other pieces of medium armor on any of these builds. Feel free to mix and match them, as the main chest piece doesn't actually matter that much, so feel free to swap them around as you see fit, but I've picked solid options for all of our builds here. Now, because we are going to be mainly focused on dealing debuffs, let's make it so not only our debuffs are more likely to land, but also everyone's debuffs. This is a party full of control spells, so let's make sure we have as much battlefield control as possible. I have combined the Brain Drain Gloves with the Ring of Mental Inhibition. The Brain Drain Gloves allow us to, whenever we deal psychic damage, also inflict mental fatigue for 2 turns. A lot of our spells do deal psychic damage, mainly Dissonant Whispers and Vicious Mockery, so that works out for us quite nicely. And Mental Fatigue makes it so the affected entity has a -1 penalty to Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma saving throws for every turn remaining. When it fails one of those saving throws while having 5 or more turns of this condition remaining, they take extra psychic damage. Partnering this up with the Ring of Mental Inhibition, which makes it so whenever a foe fails a saving throw, they also gain 2 turns of Mental Fatigue, we're going to be able to stack up extra psychic damage, weaving that in with our bonus action Vicious Mockery casts, as well as lowering the saving throw chances of our enemies, meaning that all of our allies can have a better chance to succeed with their powerful battlefield control spells. It all synergizes quite nicely with the rest of the party. And finally, the Boots of Striding. Since we are going to be concentrating on powerful spells, let's make it so it's a bit harder for us to lose that concentration, meaning because while we're concentrating, we cannot be knocked prone. We also get a bit of movement speed when we start concentrating, so we can get into position as a melee fighter a bit easier. And finally, the accessories. We have the Spellcrux Amulet. I was going to put this on somebody since we do get level 6 spell slots. This would allow you to cast something like Eye Bite or Otto's Irresistible Dance if you take it on this build more than once. In fact, it would allow you to cast both, so I feel like it's quite nice to have here. As I already said, the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel allows us to cast Illusion or Enchantment spells as a bonus action after hitting a weapon attack. Fits perfectly, and we've already gone over the Ring of Mental Inhibition. Overall, really solid little extra build. Lots of support thanks to combat inspiration and a little bit of healing that'll come with it, but being able to weave in and out of spellcasting and melee fighting and spreading debuffs around so that the party as a whole is more effective felt really nice for this build, so I'm quite happy with how this one turned out. Next up, the drummer. Let's angle the camera a bit better. There we go. So the drummer, he is our main damage dealer. As you can see, I've given him his drumsticks, which are 2 maces. So this build is going to require the dual wielder feat, but hey, honestly, I think it works out pretty nicely for us here. So again, it just made sense. We're a drummer, we have drumsticks. This was one of those things where I'm just like, that is too perfect. So you can see our stats here are a bit strange. We have a 16 in Dexterity, 16 in Constitution, and an 18 in Charisma. I just decided to focus less on maxing out Charisma in favor of bumping up Con and Dexterity, because Dexterity is going to be great for our Armour class, Constitution is going to be great for our overall hit pool, and we're not going to be as focused on spellcasting with this build as we're mainly focused on melee fighting, but 18 is still more than enough. So your main stats are going to be having probably Dex at 16, Con at 14, and Charisma at 16, bumping up Charisma and Constitution once, and then taking the dual wielder feat. So, why do we have 18 Strength? Well, that's because of our choice of weapon, the Handmaiden's Mace. Basically, the Handmaiden's Mace is going to set your strength to 18, and also deals an additional 1d6 poison damage on top of its usual damage, which is really nice, meaning that with our now 18 strength, we're able to use these maces extremely effectively as they are strength-based weapons. Pairing that up with the Devotee's Mace. Now, I know we're an all-bard party, getting a weapon that is only accessible by Cleric, but you're likely going to have a Hireling or some random MP or one of the Origin characters in camp, and you can just level them up to level 10 of Cleric and get this weapon. Hell, you could get multiple copies of this weapon, but you are going to need a way to bump up that strength, so I still recommend the Handmaiden's Mace. But the Devotee's Mace is still great. It's a +3 weapon that deals an additional 1d8 radiant damage, which is insane, as well as giving you the Healing Incense aura. And because this is a Swords Bard, we are also going to get access to two-weapon fighting as well, meaning that we're going to be able to get the most out of these weapons that we possibly can, which is great. I feel like this build is actually pretty solid. The theming is there with the drumsticks, it's all great. Unfortunately, these are both Act 3 options though, so in the early game you can go for the Blood of the Thunder, another +3 legendary mace that has a bit of healing and can also give you a casting of Sunbeam, but it doesn't really look like a drumstick as much to me because it's spiky, and I just stopped the band playing. Whoops. Well, I guess now is the point where I fade in my own choice of background music. There it is. Anyways, and in Act 1 you can also pick up the Club of Hill Giant Strength, which will set your strength to 19, making up for that low strength weakness even in the early game. So yeah, there you go. A pretty solid little weapon roundup here that was just too thematic not to do. Let's get into the equipment. Now, I've gone for the full thing with this build. We want thunder damage. We've got Shatter, we've got Thunderwave, we've got thunder-based spells. Basically just hitting the drum as hard as we can, and letting out a big dollop of thunder. And since we're a swords bard, we're also going to be able to do all the flourishes and yada yada yada. And I've also picked up things like Banishing Smite and Spirit Guardians from Magical Secrets, just so we can really bring the hammer down on our foes. I really like how this build plays combat-wise. It feels really powerful and really fun. So, let's get into the equipment. For the hat, we have the Hat of Storm Science Power. Whenever we deal thunder damage, which we're going to be doing all the time, we gain Arcane Acuity, giving us a buff to our attack rolls and spell difficulty class with our spells for each turn remaining. So the more we hit with our thunder, the more likely our enemies are to fail their saving throws, which is great. Again, that buffs the whole team. I've gone for the Armour of Agility on this build since this is going to be our primary frontline fighter. I wanted as much AC as we could get, and 21 is pretty good. This also gives us a buff to our saving throws. And of course, we're going for Reverberation with this build, because why wouldn't we? We have the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, allowing us to, whenever we deal Thunder, Lightning, or Radiant damage, which thanks to the Devotee's Mace, we can do both Radiant and Thunder pretty consistently, we inflict Reverberation. Reverberation, for those of you that don't know, causes penalties to physical saving throws per remaining turn, and when the entity has 5 or more turns of Reverberation, they take a bit of extra thunder damage and are knocked prone. And then you can keep cycling through this by continuing to attack. Again, we hit the drum so hard that the reverberations head straight to our enemies and knock them kind of off balance. Stacking this with the Boots of Stormy Clamour, whenever we inflict a condition upon a hostile creature, which we can easily do through Spirit Guardians or Vicious Mockery or something like that, they also gain Reverberation that way. So we could throw on Spirit Guardians and just walk around inflicting Reverberation on everybody before we even need to attack. Awesome stuff. Also, I've gone for the Spine Shudder Amulet. Whenever we make a ranged spell attack, which you could pick up with this build, you also inflict Reverberation that way. This is kind of not necessary. It is actually a bit overkill, especially when a lot of the spells you might want to take might not be ranged attack spells, but I thought I would point it out, but feel free to switch this out for whatever you like. I've also packed on the Ring of Spiteful Thunder, causing an enemy who is taking who takes thunder damage while reverberating, so having the reverberation condition, it will become dazed unless it succeeds a con save, which means it has disadvantage on wisdom saves, which is great for our party here, and can't take reactions, and they also lose their dexterity bonus from their armor class, making them much weaker. Really savage combo. As well as the Ring of the Absolute Force, allowing us to, whenever we deal thunder damage, we deal an additional 1 thunder damage. Seems a bit minor, but if you were to use all of these features while standing in the Vocalist's Shriek melody, that's gonna stack up pretty goddamn quick. And also, it felt like it was on theme for this build, so I wanted to pick it up, but you can throw whatever you like in this slot. And yeah, that is the drummer. I feel like he's a pretty fun build, probably my favourite out of all of these, if I'm being honest, at least from a pure gameplay perspective. He just feels extremely fun to play, the Swords Bard stuff melds nicely with the Thunder stuff, I really like it. And finally, we're on to the Violinist, who is all about ranged attacks, and so, as you could probably guess, we've got Sharpshooter on this build. Sharpshooter is obviously going to launch our damage into the stratosphere, making us take a -5 penalty to our attack rolls, but deal an additional 10 damage. That penalty is really easy to overcome with the amount of debuffs this party is able to place on our enemies, so Sharpshooter's penalty is basically non-existent with this build, but you'll see that I've taken precautions to make sure it's definitely never going to come up anyway. As such, our main weapons of choice are 2 dual-hand crossbows. Again, that makes the most sense. This is our second Swords Bard, but this one is focused more on range, and with using 2-weapon fighting, we're able to dual wield effectively. Again, throwing on Sharpshooter to deal massive damage. This character is going to be our probably most effective DPS, less focusing on spellcasting, which is why their charisma is the lowest of the bunch, kind of just preferring to stay at the back of combat and use their 20 dexterity, to focus more on being able to deal large amounts of damage with Sharpshooter, but they're no slouch. They still have Vicious Mockery, and a bunch of other things, but they've gone for more utility spells like Knock, Detect Thoughts, Speak with Dead, Plant Growth, and stuff like that. Even Crusader's Mantle from Magical Secrets to make all of our allies deal additional radiant damage. They're mostly focused on utility and support through that kind of way of thinking, as well as just hanging back and shooting and dealing a lot of damage. And I mean a lot of damage, it's pretty insane. But yeah, Sharpshooter works out really nicely for us here. So as you know, with the dual-hand crossbows, we always pretty much use the Hellfire hand crossbow, as well as the near misser. These are just kind of the two best ones. And in our melee, for our melee weapon, I always like to slap the Knife of the Undermountain King on a build like this, because it's just going to make it so we have a higher chance to crit, and we re-roll our low damage die, which with Sharpshooter is going to feel very, very powerful. I haven't thrown a shield on this build for aesthetic reasons, but you absolutely could if you wanted to. I would give you 22 AC overall, which would be nice. So, let's get into the actual equipment now. First up, the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. Basically, whenever we cast Vicious Mockery or Inflict a Condition or something like that, we gain Arcane Synergy for 2 rounds, meaning that we add our spellcasting ability modifier to our damage. You can swap this out with another headpiece from another character in this party if you want. Again, a lot of these pieces of equipment can kind of be swapped around and still work quite well, so feel free to throw this on whoever you like. So in a similar vein, we have the 1T Scale Mail. This is just a medium armor that has decent base armor class that adds our full dexterity modifier since it's so high, giving us a nice AC of 20. Additionally, this doesn't impose disadvantage and gives on stealth, and gives us a +1 bonus to initiative rolls, allowing us to act early. We're quick on the draw. Next up, we have the Gloves of Archery. This is going to give our ranged weapon attacks an additional 2 damage, so that's 12 total with Sharpshooter, which is insane, and it gives you the ability to access longbows and shortbows, so you have the full range of kind of ranged bows to go with if you so choose. And finally, the Boots of Speed. I love the Boots of Speed on ranged builds that aren't rogues. This gives us the ability to dash as a bonus action, and having disadvantage on opportunity attacks against us while we do. It allows us to get into position a lot more easily, so we can stay safe while shooting from afar. Next up, this is just a throwaway slot, but I really liked having the silver pendant on this build. For some reason, having guidance in a party of bards just feels right to me, so that's what I've decided to go with here. We also have the Strange Conduit Ring. We're pretty much always going to be concentrating on something or another, as we're a bard, so this allows us to deal an additional 1d4 psychic damage with our weapon attacks, adding that on to all of our other stuff, while we're just kind of attacking, so it feels great to me. And finally, the Risky Ring. This gives us advantage on all of our attack rolls. Great for Sharpshooter. Obviously, it comes with the caveat of disadvantage on saving throws, but we have enough allies who are going to be kind of taking the heat away from us to not really have to focus on that too much. This is pretty much a net gain for us overall. And yeah, those are the builds. Overall, I am really proud of how this kind of party turned out. They're an extremely charismatic group. They all actually have what I feel like is a pretty unique role to play in the party. They're all extremely effective at doing so. As you'll see in the combat footage, we just absolutely shred this encounter. And they all feel really fun and unique despite being in the same class. Obviously, I was going to use Swords Bard twice because, again, melee and ranged Swords Bard, it just makes sense to kind of split those two. But actually, with the way the drummer is set up, you could throw the dual hand crossbows on him and not really lose much there, and maybe throw the gun to mail on the violinist, because that would also work. But yeah, there's just so much to this build. An all-Bard party was going to be strong. In my opinion, Bard is one of the stronger classes in the game, College of Swords being one of the strongest subclasses in the game. One of these days I gotta do like a tier list of like an actual tier list, not that stupid joke one I did a few months ago, to actually kind of like go over what I feel like the kind of strongest subclasses are. And such like that, or maybe the strongest classes, or maybe the strongest party composition. I don't know, could be fun, but maybe not for a while. But yeah, no, I'm really happy with how these builds turned out. I can say that over and over, and it remains true. Yeah, there's not much else really to discuss. Obviously, like I said, comment below which class you want to see next. The most upvoted comment will decide where this series goes. We've covered Fighter and Clerics already, so we've got quite a few classes left to go, I think it being 9, which is a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there really is to say. I'll be returning to live streaming this weekend, and I've got a plan for a stream that I think is going to be really fun. It is Baldur's Gate 3 related, but I'm deliberately keeping it a mystery, and you'll see why when the stream happens. But it is BG3 related, so I really hope you guys come around. I just have to actually finish getting it prepared, because it actually takes a lot of prep work on my side for this particular stream. So, but I'm really looking forward to getting that ready for you guys. But yeah, I think I'm going to call it here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.